Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Roll to the Top Journeys from All Play. Roll to the Top Journeys is a 1 to 6 player roll and write game which players are going to be rolling dice and then using those dice to go ahead and fill in numbers on the particular map that you're playing. This is specifically the one called Journeys. It's a re-implementation of Roll to the Top, which is already available. This is a standard formula All Play does. They bring back a title, they tweak it a bit, they adjust it, they make it very accessible. They have their classic 2-page rulebook, so this is very easy to teach, very easy to play, very easy to get up and running. But the basic idea in this game is you're trying to be the first person to fill out your grid. You're going to have a grid over here, you just want to be the first person to fill it out. There's nothing more complicated than that. Fill out your grid, you win the game. All players fill out the grid in the same turn, they all win the game together. Ta-da! No tiebreakers, no this, no that, no point scoring. Although you could play together a journey of a bunch of maps together, in which case if you do that, you can have a point scoring system. If each box you have unfilled is worth a point, that kind of thing. There is a slight point scoring system if you do a journey and an arc and you try to do, how you score across them. But that's more than we need to go into. The basic idea for the actual gameplay, how do you fill these things in? And again, bunch of variants as far as what you can do, but I'm going to cover the core gameplay. You're going to be taking these dice over here, you're going to be rolling them. You're going to roll those dice, and then to start the game off, any number that is even is going to be in play. So we have these 6, 6, 2, and 6 are in play. This 11 is going to leave play. That's just defining the starting roll. From there, you're going to go ahead and using your little markers over here, you can choose what to mark in. Now, this is actually an interesting combination. Having 3 6s in the starting roll really gives me a lot to consider, but you know what? I'm actually going to go with this. I'm going to go ahead and put down a 2 over here, and I'm going to go ahead and put down a 6, 6, and 6 over here. That might be a mistake. It may well be. Usually I would never put a 6 down in the starting roll, but we'll talk more about the rules. But before we do that, the first person thing to note is the next person has to go ahead and add a die, because we rolled a plus over here. So they have to add a die. There's only 1 die to add, so not a lot of agency. They'll go ahead and take the dice over here, pass it to them, and they'll go ahead and roll. Now all the dice are in play, just based on what was there, but we'll talk more about that in a second. We'll explain what this does, and we'll explain why it doesn't do what it does in a second. But right now, we have the 1, 10, 14, 4, and 4. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with that. We're going to go ahead and put the 1 all the way down in the corner over here. We're going to do that. The 14 we're going to ignore for right now. The 10 we're going to ignore. And the 4 and the 4, we're going to go ahead and lock those both in over here. We'll see how this goes as far as this fills out. But the main thing to note as you're filling in your boxes is you can put down any number you want on the starting row, but then when you're building above it, it has to be higher than those numbers. So I can put a 6 above 6s. I could not have put a 5 over there because it has to be higher or equal to both of the boxes below it. So that's where we are right now, end of round 2. But right about now, you would look at this die, the special die, and this die says you can either add or remove a die. Usually, whenever you have all 5 dice in play, you ignore this and you remove a die. So the next player has a chance to choose which die to remove. Right about now, being early game, they're going to remove this high value die, and they're going to go ahead and roll these dice. And so we see what we got here. We got a plus again. So we're going to keep going with those high value pulls. We have a 4, 5, 6, and 11. I think we're going to go ahead and put down the 5 over here, the 6 over here, and we'll go ahead and put the 4 up here. I don't think we need to push past that. And again, next player's turn. We're going to go ahead and roll these dice over here and see what we got. We got a 6, 6, 6. Jeez, these 6s are something else. Oh, that's a 9. That's a 9. My bad. We have a 9, 6, 6, 1, and 3. The 1 we're going to pop down there. The 3 we're going to pop down there. And then we have a 6, 6, and a 9, which I'm actually going to go ahead and put down the 6 over here. Do I want to put a 9 down? I'll put the 9 down. 6 there, the 9 over there. Now, a few things to talk about. In general, the way this center die works over here is you either remove a die, you add a die, you swap a die, or you either add or remove, with the caveat that if you ever have 1 die, you must add, and if you ever have all 5 dice, you must remove. In those cases, you ignore this dice. Past that, one thing you haven't seen yet, which is very important to note, is you can always add together dice. So let's go ahead and roll these dice and see what we got over here. I don't remember what it was. It might have been a plus. I don't remember, but we're going to go ahead and do this. So we're going to see what we got. We got a 20, an 8, a 4, a 3, and a 5. So the 3 we're going to put down over here. We're going to mark the 3 down there. Now keep in mind, all players are doing this simultaneously on their boards. This is not my dice. We're all using the same dice. I'm going to use this 5 over here, and ooh, there's no good place for the 5. So let's come back to the 5 in a second. You know what? We're going to use the 5 and the 4 together. We're going to add them together. We're going to make that a 9. We're going to put that above the 9 and 6 because it has to be a 9 there. We're going to use the 8 above here, and we're going to ignore the 20. So the thing I want to show you is you can add together any number of dice to make a higher number, which means you're never really capped out. You can always have, well, I mean, I guess there's a theoretical cap, but you're not going to get close to like adding all the dice. You're going to be aiming for trying to work your way up to the pyramid. And the tricky part is you fill in more boxes if you don't have to combine dice. As soon as you start combining dice, then you're effectively using 2 dice for 1 box, when somebody else may use those 2 dice for 2 boxes, and they may be able to close your pyramid faster. We'll do one more round over here. Again, we ignore this over here. We are going to remove a die because we have all 5 dice over here. Right about now, I'm actually going to choose to remove this, which is part of the strategy of the game, is choosing which dice to remove based on what you need and based on what your opponents need. We have 18, we have a swap a die, a 5, a 6, and a 3. That 6 is not as helpful as it once was. That 18 is dead useless over here for us. The 3, 6, and 5 over here we can work with. We want the... we have the 5 and the 3 we can work with there. But then the 6 would be a waste. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and just put the 5 over here. I don't want to do anything. We'll put the 3 over here. We'll knock that out. We'll do the 5 over here, and we'll do the 6 over there. I guess we'll do that over there. We'll swap out a die over here, so we're going to swap out a lower number for these, and continue rolling, and see what we got over here. That went off camera. We got a 12, a 7, a 6, and a 3. The 3 can go over here. We're going to be moving a die after this. The 6 can go over here. The 7 can go above that, and we have the 12 over here, which I think we're going to waste over here, but that's kind of enough of the system. You're getting an idea of how this plays out. The basic idea is you roll dice, you use those dice to go ahead and ascend up the pyramid based on whoever's highest or whatnot. There are, again, various variants of how to play the game in case you want to mix things up, but that is the basic gameplay of Roll to the Top. Swap in dice, add, remove, whatever, work your way up the pyramid, and try to be the first one to the top. But before we dive into the review parts of things, because I've basically kind of done with the teaching part, we got to talk about the fact that that is the basic map over here. You have this basic map, the pyramid, but then you have the Eiffel Tower. That's going to introduce some new rules over here. When you have a center box over here, which has nothing below it, then you can fill that in with any number you want once either of these 2 boxes are filled. That's going to be true of this box here as well, and you're slowly working your way up a very direct tower over there. So a little bit different arc as far as how you're going to play with that, and same thing with this oak over here, because now you have an oak you can play with, and you also have these caves on the other side, and then you have Stonehenge over here, as well as, you know, whatever this place is. These all have places, these all have names, but then if those 6 maps aren't enough for you, there's also an expansion to the top pack. There's the Roll to the Top expansion pack, which I don't know if there's an official name for it. It's the Roll to the Top expansion, Adventures. It's the Adventures expansion pack. So in case those 6 maps aren't enough, we now have 6 more maps for you. We have over here this map over here with, again, 2 sides over here, so we can go ahead and start working with this. And some of these maps will add new rules. So for instance, these following these red arrows, you have to descend. We have the Taj Mahal over here. We have the other side of that. We have the Big Ben and a little side tower, again with its own special rules. And we have this cave location as well, which is a fun little puzzle of how things operate. Basically, 12 different maps to play with. If you have the base game and the expansion, you have 12 different unique experiences to play with, utilizing that same system. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into our review, starting off with the ease of play. Ease of play, it's an all-play game. They have 2-page rule books, incredibly accessible rules. Their core ideals are having accessible, easy-to-teach, easy-to-play games, and they knock it out of the park every single time with that. As far as game time, you can knock out a game of Roll to the Top in like 15 to 30 minutes max. I'd say probably 15 to 20, 25 minutes, I'd say, is the range you're typically looking at. It is a fast-playing game. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see how it's not liking here, I'll skip my usual, I guess, full review format because there's not a lot to really go in here. Roll to the Top is very basic. It's very straightforward. It's the kind of game that might be in a roundup review as opposed to a dedicated review. The problem is I like the game. I like it more than I thought I would. My first exposure Roll to the Top was actually playing this on Board Game Arena. In fact, you could play it on Board Game Arena. They have like 6 maps or 7 maps. I don't know. They have a bunch of maps available. You can check it out, try it out, see if it's a game for you. And I liked it. But to me, the game didn't shine when I was playing this basic map. My first plays of this game was just playing the basic pyramid, which is great for learning the game because it's the most straightforward. It is the most basic. But that also means that you don't see more of the intricacies of the game and of the decisions you're playing out, contrasted with, let's say, when you play on this tree over here, you have to be mindful of which things are fading off into nothingness. This number is going to cascade up and then stop, which means you can actually play around with such numbers that are going to go to the edges and no longer appear, contrasted with that pyramid, which is always, every number is always leading into your arc over there, and so that changes the way you play the game. These small little rules adjustments change the way you play the game. That opera house where you're curving downwards, something you have to evaluate, oh, we need to plan around late game having those numbers in play. Roll to the Top is a very basic, straightforward, simple game. It is easy to teach, it's easy to play, it's fast moving, the variety of maps keeps it interesting, all those things are good, but the lowest point of the game, the part that makes it the least interesting and why it might not be a game for you is the decision space in general is very limited. There's a handful of things you want to take into account as you play. You want to keep in mind the distribution of, as you go through the game, you want to have some degree of lower numbers, some degree of high numbers. If you only arc your way up, then you'll find yourself stuck late game. There's certain small little things you're trying to figure out as far as how to optimize around the game. Trying to take numbers that hurt your opponents, taking them out of play, putting them into play. There are small things, but it is a very light game. It's very light on the decision space, which to me, the reason this game is, I guess, as enjoyable as it is there's 12 different maps. I haven't played all these maps yet. I've played a handful of the maps because, starting with the base game, I played that base pyramid, I don't know, 8, 9 times. I played the base pyramid a whole lot on BGA. It was easy to play. They have more than the base pyramid on BGA. I don't think I realized that. I was just hitting play every single time. And only once I got the physical copy did I start to dabble around with the different maps, and that changed how much I enjoy the game. There are some things to be mindful of. It does have a runaway leader problem. Someone who gets ahead early game, and some maps is harder or easier to see than others. Again, if you're playing something like this, you won't notice it as quickly. If you're playing the Eiffel Tower, it's very easy to see who's working their way up to the top. So the game does have a runaway leader problem that's worth being aware of. But again, it's a 20-25 minute game, so it's usually not that much of an issue for me. But ultimately, this is a very simple game. It's a very accessible game, but it's just a fun game. It's just fun. That's the core thing. It's fun, and the variety of maps keep it interesting. So as far as final thoughts on this one, I like Roll to the Top Journeys. I think it's a very rewarding, easy to play, accessible roll and write game that I would not like as much if they had one map. If they had a single map, whichever map it was, if they had a single map, I'm pretty sure I'd be done with this. I'd be like playing it, I'd enjoy it, and I'd move on from it. And to that point, to that end, I don't know if this is a forever game for me. I don't imagine it is. I think it's too light where it is. But I do think it's the kind of game where I'm going to keep it around until I go through the maps. So I say that from time to time. Sometimes games don't stick around that long. But I do plan on going through this more. I'm excited to play it more. I played this with a bunch of people in my group. I've even had a friend ask to borrow it the other day because they're like, it's just a fun and simple game. So I guess this is... Rating-wise for me, this is a 4 out of 5, and I wrestle with that rating. I always wrestle with rating lighter games higher, not because lighter games can't be highly rated, but because I do know myself, and I know that over time, lighter games don't hold their shine as much for me. So today it might be a 4 to 5, and 6 months from now it might be leaving my collection. That is one of those things to be mindful of. I don't think it will, only because I think the variety of maps will keep it there for long enough, and if they put out more maps, I'd love to get those. It's just simple and fun. The fact that it plays up to 6 players simultaneously very easily just makes this a good, accessible roll and write game. This is probably my go-to recommendation for intro to roll and writes right now. So it is a 4 to 5 with the caveat that please understand this is a lighter game and it may not be a fit for you. Again, I highly encourage checking out on Board Game Arena where you can get a sense of the gameplay and just try 1 or 2 maps and see if you find it rewarding. I do, even though decision space is very light in the game. And so that's Roll to the Top Journeys from Allplay. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Trek 12 will be a similar game that I think the appeal of Trek 12, similarly to Roll to the Top, it's a basic game that elevates its appeal through the unlocking of packs and maps and cards and all these things. So it takes a basic gameplay premise and then it adds more to it just in the form of new content and unlocked content around a very accessible game. And then similarly, if you're looking for something else from Allplay themselves, it's going to give you a bit more crunch to your roll and write experience. I think On Tour will give you just a drop more crunch in a game system that is a drop more rules to it and a drop more decision space as far as how you can actually try to work your way towards a perfect goal. But in On Tour, you're basically trying to chart a sequence across a map, and there are a variety of maps to play with that will again mix up your gameplay experience. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.